Welcome to this week's edition of Auto Insiders with Ray Shefska, and my guest today is Jason Tamaroff, and Jason is the vice president of the Tamaroff Group, which is a dealership group in Michigan, and I believe it's a little deeper than that. You guys are more than just a dealership group, if I'm not mistaken. Is
we
that
are
correct? Yes.
Can
you explain to us who? First of all, can you explain to us who the hell you are and how you actually got stuck in this position?
So that's actually a good story. And so my grandpa, so I'm a third generation dealer. I grew up in the dealership business. My grandpa was, he went to World War II, served in World War II, was actually a prisoner of war, and kind of was being marched around through Germany. He got really lucky because he got captured towards the very end of the war. So he wasn't kind of captured for that long. And so when he got released, he was walking around. He developed a lot of bad health issues from that later on, like asthma. He had really bad, anyways. And so he ended up coming back to Michigan after the war. He went to GMI Institute and he got an engineering degree. He was kind of on the side selling some cars. He ended up leaving GMI because I think of some, and he just found a better opportunity to sell the cars instead. So he opened up a used car lot, and then I guess actually before he opened the used car lot, he disagreed with the trade value on one of the trades that his managers put on it. And the manager basically said, well, if you don't like the trade, you buy it. And so, if you don't like my value, you buy it. And so he bought it. And, the rest is kind of history. He ended up opening his own used car lot. He had a couple used car lots after the riots in Detroit. He ended up leaving Detroit and his used car lot. And he finally was able to land a Buick dealership in Southfield, Detroit. Basically, the story is that like every Buick dealer in the area needed to turn it down for my grandpa to get it. And so they all turned it down. He got it. And then the rest is kind of history. So we've been in Southfield for, I think we're going on 52 years now, which is great. And so kind of going back to your main question, we do other things as well. So we also have a leasing company, and then we have like a benchmarking business that works with OEMs and suppliers to provide competitive vehicles for them to use for benchmarking purposes.
Well, very cool. And I believe your background, if I'm not mistaken, you're a CPA.
So I'm a CPA by school.
Okay.
I did auditing one summer during my master's in accounting, and very quickly realized I don't like auditing and I couldn't do auditing for the rest of my life. So that was good to find that out early. And yes, so I'm an accountant by training. Yes.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is typically, most times when I talk to somebody that wanted to become a salesperson at a dealership or something, I would look at them and I go, well, you're trained as an accountant.
Yeah. I'm not a salesman. And so,
I know you're not, but my point was going to be.
No. I mean, like, not like actually, like I'm not allowed to talk to customers. I couldn't sell you anything. You'd walk away without buying the car.
Well, apparently somebody told me something. I'm interviewing you.
Right. Good point.
Well, here's what my point was going to be. When someone would come in and they'd have a degree in something just out of college, and they'd go, well, but what I really wanted to do is I really wanted to sell cars, and I would look at that person and I'd go, I'm pretty sure if you go home and you tell your parents after you just spent 4 years in college that you're going to utilize that college degree to sell cars, they're not going to be very pleased with you. But in your case, because it was the family business,
Yeah.
They were probably disappointed that you wanted to go to school and become an accountant.
No, I think actually my dad was amazing. And because I think it's really important, like the individual, you can't force someone into any business, in particular the automotive business, just
Yes.
because it's so unique, I think. And so my dad was great that he really didn't put any pressure on me to join or not to join. My cousin, who's my partner, he only wanted to be a car dealer his whole life. And so right out of school, he started working for the family and was fine. It worked for him. I frankly I didn't want to, I went to Michigan, University of Michigan, graduated in the business school. And I frankly just didn't want to stay in Metro Detroit. And so if I didn't stay, and I didn't really want to sell cars in Chicago or something or different cities. So I ended up working for Deloitte. Not doing auditing, but I did corporate finance. So I did like mergers and acquisitions. It was really cool. I worked for a lot of really cool, interesting companies during my tenure. And I think it really helped me hone like my analytical skills and that piece, which really helped me later on, kind of the position that I'm in now, which is, my cousin and I are partners, but he's much more on the operations side. I'm more on the finance and accounting side. And it took us some time, but to work it out, but it works. And we're very fortunate that we have each other because we're kind of opposites in the good areas and we're similar in the right areas. And we make a good team.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I got to believe that some of your skill sets make up for his weaknesses, and some of his strengths make up for your weaknesses, so that together, you're a good fit, a good match.
Because he's the sales guy that's keep on saying, "Let's go, 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 go," and I'm like, "Well, hold on, like maybe we should wait and think about this first before we, jump full with both feet." But back to my dad, he really never put pressure on me to join the business. I met. The weird story is that I went to middle school, high school, and college with my wife, even though we were like the same grade and the same schools. We were kind of acquaintances. We reconnected in Chicago. We ended up getting married, and then when she's from Detroit, so when we were ready to settle down, we decided to move back to Detroit. And I don't know why I did this because it's not like it was a surprise. But so I moved. I was having my first son, my first child, and I changed career. So like I started work like the same month, actually a few like weeks or a few days before my son was born, which was like the dumbest thing. Because in retrospect, like again, it's not like it was a surprise. I should have just waited to start working for my family until after he was born, but I didn't. And so because I was like working like day 2. Elon was born, and then I was like back to work like the next day, and I've never heard the end of it.
Well, I can assure you that you never will. There's certain things in life that you learn to always regret, and that story that you just shared with me, that'll be one of them.
It might.
Yeah, the fact that you would leave your wife and your newborn son to get to work. But when you're starting out a new career, a new job, and you're the owner's son, it puts a different pressure on you and a different microscope on you. And I felt that I need to be there. How long have you and your cousin Eric been running things?
So my dad. So I started. It'll be actually 10 years in March since I've been working for the family. Yeah. My dad sold. We bought the Jeffrey dealership for my dad in 2018.
Wow.
So it's been just about 5 years now that Eric and I have been running things. And so the first year, so we had 2018. was a good year. We had a freak hail storm that only hit, like there's a bunch of other dealerships on Gratiot, which is the street that we're at Jeffrey. And we had a freak hailstorm in 2019 that only hit Jeffrey. And this was the time where we had, 450 new and used cars in stock.
Oh my.
And so every single car was damaged with, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 in damage. It penetrated our roof. So our Kia showroom was leaking which is where our general office was. It kind of was a blessing. So this was our second year of ownership. So we ended up it actually worked out because we really needed to redo our Kia showroom anyways. And so, so we redid our whole general office, which is why I got this great wallpaper behind me.
That is great wallpaper. I love that wallpaper.
It's really cool. It's like a circuit board or something.
Yes.
But so we had, so 2018 was good. 2019, we had this crazy flood. We had to redo the Kia showroom, redo and fix every single car in stock. And then 2020, we had COVID. And then 2021, and then since it's been very good. So it's been a wild ride.
Oh my!
So my dad tries to always remind us that things weren't always like this.
Well, I started in retail automotive in 1977, so I can assure you it hasn't always been like this.
Exactly.
What your background being primarily in finance and really looking at the numbers, what is it that you concentrate on to determine whether a store is doing well or not?
Good question. I think it's really a combination of everything. I think at the end of the day, like we kind of have an idea of like what our kind of SG&A or like expenses are, and then it's really just trying to take a look at what's their front end, back end PVR, and what's their fixed coverage ratio, and how what's their breakdown of CP versus warranty versus internal, and it's really looking at all those little things.
I've got a silly question. I don't know, that's a silly question, but for many of the dealerships that I worked for, as the internal customer, I got to pay customer pay rates. That's what I that's what I was charged. Is that what you do at your dealerships as well?
We used to give our service department, our used car department, a really good deal, and they got a very large discount from our door rate. Service is really hard these days. Just recruiting and retaining technicians is important.
And difficult.
Yeah, and difficult. And so, consequently, we've given out a lot of raises in the last few years, just from general inflation and, trying to keep, retain really good key players. Exactly. Consequently, I guess similarly, other expenses have gone up a lot. And so consequently, our door rate has gone up quite a lot in the last, really in the last 5 years. And so there's other pay plan issues, but yes, I think generally you should be charging probably your door rate for your used car recon.
And do you and I get why dealers do it. I mean, because if you're going to spend the money, you might as well spend it internally. Do you mandate that all the work has to be done, all the reconditioning that is capable of being done within your shops are done at your shops and not farmed out anywhere else?
So it's important to try to keep everything in house, but yes, we try to keep whatever we can internal. However, speed is important. And so sometimes, because I go nuts when I sign our payable checks, and we're sending an alignment out to the tire shop down the street. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I'm paying double for what I could do internally. So
Yes.
the answer you always get is, yeah, but I didn't have an available technician, and it wasn't going to be available. It would have taken me 3 extra days or an extra day, and sometimes speed is important, especially on recon, to get it done and get it frontline ready so they can sell it.
Can you share with our audience what brands you guys represent? Obviously, I have to believe Buick is still one of them.
No, so that's actually kind of a sad. My grandpa sold everything under the sun, from Rolls Royce to Yugo to Daewoo to motorhomes.
He was an equal opportunity seller.
He was. He was. So we used to have 2 Buick stores and a Dodge store, but we sold one of them before the bankruptcy, and then we lost a Buick and a Dodge store in the bankruptcies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of really had to take a look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? Because otherwise we have 2 Honda stores, 2 Nissan, an Acura, and a Kia Point, all in Metro Detroit.
Okay.
And so when we lost the domestics, again, we kind of had to take a look and say, what are we going to do here? And so this was before I had joined the dealership, because I was still at Deloitte. In fact, that was, if I can segue for a moment.
You can.
When I was at Deloitte, I was actually working I did a couple of gigs at the big 3 that Deloitte was helping them out. One of them, I don't know if I'm allowed to share the name, but I was working for one of the big 3 in Auburn Hills.
Okay.
And we were trying to help them raise some money. And I was there for the Nardelli testimony, and it was just really a crazy stressful time at just in the industry. And then after that engagement, I was working for another supplier or another OEM, where they had one of their windshield manufacturers suppliers was in trouble, and you can't make cars without windshields. And so they brought us in, and we were trying to take a look at the numbers and come up with cash flows and how much money did they need. And the OEM made a really bad mistake of, they wrote them basically a check to keep them afloat with no strings attached, millions and millions of dollars. In the end, the owners ended up saying, hey, IRS, I paid you all this money in taxes last year, but we lost all this money this year. So can I get a refund because I lost so many millions of dollars this year? Give me a refund on my tax I paid last year. And it was all basically the OEM's money that they were getting back in a tax. So it was really bad. So anyway, sorry. So I think the question was, so we sell Honda, Nissan, Acura, Kia. And again, so we had to make that decision. We're going to be the best, dealers in our markets. And so we've been the number 1 Nissan or Honda dealership in Michigan for quite some time.
Wow.
And we're the top Nissan group as well, in Michigan as well. So,
and if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but the selling of imported brands is a lot more difficult in the Detroit area and in Michigan in general than it is in other parts of the country, simply because you have so many UAW workers and such an allegiance to the domestic brands in Michigan.
So it's not really fair to say, I don't like the word domestic versus non-domestic, because, the overwhelming majority of the Hondas are built in the U.S. and built in North America. And after all, FCA is not even a U.S. company. They're based in the Netherlands or whatever. So, so I don't like the term, but I feel like the newspaper had a new term for it. Maybe is it the Detroit 3 or something, I think that they call it, or the former Big 3. But anyways, yes, the import penetration is nothing compared to anywhere else in the country. It's the Big 3 have 80% market share, and Honda I think has a 5%. Don't quote me on it, but it's a rounding error. And so it is because, Detroit in particular is just a dumping ground. If, GM can't sell Traverses nationally, they put a crazy deal on them for a lease deal, and they wholesale them to all their Metro Detroit dealers, and they crush them. They just flood the market and they sell them. I mean, everyone used to drive back pre-COVID. Everyone had a $300 Dodge Ram lease payment, like just crazy.
Yes,
Now
especially
they're paying $900, but yeah.
Yeah, especially when you consider today, like almost 20% of all auto loans have a payment in excess of $1,000 a month.
Well, right. So that has been good for us because I think a lot of people, and I think the OEMs, I think the big three to some extent kind of cut back on those supplier programs and employee deals.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has definitely opened our eyes, or consumers' eyes, to our brands, which has been really good as well.
And
for us.
You wouldn't know this, but I represented Acura for 12 years, both in Arizona and in Maryland. Honda Acura is a hell of a high quality brand. So when you're selling those, and even Nissan, the first 12 years in the industry I spent at a Nissan dealership, you're representing good quality brands there.
No question. Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of people that have kept their cars a long, many, many years and come back for service. We are really blessed with a really good group of tenured technicians that take good care of our customers and make sure that they're keeping their cars running for a long time.
You mentioned something to me before we went on the air, and that something was that during the COVID times when suddenly there was a shortage of cars, but no shortage of customers, that you guys never got involved in the practice of adding market adjustments and things like that to your vehicles. Why did you make that decision, do you think?
So I think ultimately it all, because that was short. I think, and we think that those were short-term issues that consumers won't forget, that they tried to go back to their dealer and lease another Honda, and they added a $5,000 market adjustment, or the Telluride was $10,000 over MSRP plus accessories and an F&I addendum and all. We felt that consumers would remember that, and we wanted to make sure that when you've been in business for 50 plus years, we're very fortunate to have a much longer horizon of looking at our customers and trying to we want to create long-lasting partnerships with our customers. We want them to continue coming back.
So if I heard you correctly, you're looking at the long-term picture as opposed to a short-term gain.
Yeah. Frankly, there were a few instances where special cars that might have had some, but generally speaking, no, our cars did not have market adjustments and we weren't doing, silly stuff.
Well, I commend you for that. I go off the rails quite often, complaining about the dealers that even to this day are still adding $4,000 and $5,000 and $10,000 market adjustments as, I don't know, inventories are building back up, which doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. I used to say that at a certain point, if you charge a customer a $5,000 market adjustment, one day, not too long after the customer bought that vehicle, they're going to wake up and they're going to realize, I just gave them $5,000 and I got nothing for it other than the opportunity to have the car now.
Right.
There's no added value to that.
No, it's just supply and demand. Yeah. But it was significantly imbalanced, and frankly, we've had I feel like throughout the pandemic, our Honda inventory right now is just as bad as it's been throughout the pandemic, because we've just been turning everything that we've been getting. there's other, like our Nissan brand there, we have a little more availability there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's just silly to play those games and try to gouge people.
It seems to me that ultimately it leaves a bad taste in a customer's mouth, and if
For
the
sure.
oper if the intent of the business is to sell somebody more than one car,
Hmm.
you're not really moving in that direction if you charge them an extra $10,000 simply because you can.
That was our feeling, and that's why we chose not to do that. Yep. I mean, that was a conscious decision by our team here to make sure that we were doing the right thing, and because we want to create those long-term customers.
No, that
No
I
question.
honest to God, I can't commend you guys enough for taking that position because let's face it, looking at an extra two, three, four, $5,000 for every car sold, that money can add up quickly,
Oh yeah.
um, and can sway a lot of dealerships into doing just that. But ultimately, it will end up in the long term, probably costing those dealerships business once there's inventory again. You mentioned that on the Honda side that your stuff is basically sold. I'm guessing sold prior to it actually coming in.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're still having um, inventory issues with Honda, and I would imagine with Kia.
For some reason, our Kia throughput has slowed a little bit in the last month or two, and so we do have a little bit more Kia inventory. We're trying to work on why that is. I think I have some ideas, but our Honda inventory is very thin, and there's certain models like HRVs that are just impossible. I mean, we're like sold out for all of our allocation for what we've got on order, and it's really hard.
It's as someone who sold cars for a living, it's frustrating when you have the customers but you don't have the product. So
Totally. And
yeah,
it's yes, totally. Especially when you've got repeat customers that you want to take care of and people that are expiring leases and yeah. But
are
we're fortunate that especially our salesmen, they can sell anything on our campus. So
okay.
the good news is that if you do have someone that's in a CRV and their lease is up and we can't get them another CRV for 3 months, the good news is the sales consultant is able to sell them a different product that might, meet that family's needs.
Is Are the captive lenders working with you as far as when somebody's lease is coming up and you won't have the replacement vehicle for an extra 3 months? Are they working with you, allowing that customer to extend their lease for that 3 month period of time so that they can get into that new CRV?
So that's a case by case basis so really that's a lender consumer
Yes.
question. But yes, for the most part, I, I feel that I've heard that the flexibility and the length of time that they're willing to extend is declining. Like they'll get like Honda will give you, I think, 3 months or 6 months, but earlier on in the pandemic, they would like let you go indefinite because there just was nothing. I
Hmm.
feel like the captives are kind of sticking to a more firm deadline for when that ends. I don't know
Gotcha.
if you've heard anything similar to that.
Honestly, I haven't. I'm just assuming that as long as for vehicles such as Honda, Toyota, Subaru, where the day supply is truly limited, I would just imagine that those captive lenders will work a little harder to keep those customers within those brands. And if that means
Totally,
extending a lease an extra 3 months or 6 months in order to accommodate that customer, I would just imagine they would do that. I
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, customer loyalty is important, and the captives and the man, they all understand that, and they're trying to work with customers to keep that.
Now, you said something interesting that perked up my ears a few minutes ago, and that was that your Kia inventory is starting to build up, and you have a theory as to why that is. And I'm wondering if your theory is the same as my theory, which my theory is it's called affordability. Um, because of higher interest rates and higher monthly payments. Is that what you think it is?
Um, so there's no question that's part of it. Um, I think we might have a process issue internally that we need
Okay.
to address and that we're working on. But I do think that that's part of it. But yeah, part of it is also I think we've got our own internal issues that
Okay. Well,
we're dealing with.
I don't want to know about your internal issue. It wouldn't be fair for you to share those with us. But
Yeah,
do you see
I mean,
the
but affordable, like you get to a saturation point of people that can afford $1,000 car note. You know, like
exactly?
that at some point, it's not going to be able to continue. Um, and I think an interesting, if you want to pivot the conversation, an interesting conversation is about the EVs and the like
Exactly.
our EVs on our lot. Like for our Kias, like we've got a 14-day supply of new ICE Kias,
Yes.
but like our EVs are like 120 days, and
Yes.
so. But I think a really big issue with that is affordability. Now, Nissan, they kind of so Nissan has the new Aria, which is
Yes.
very expensive,
Yes.
beautiful car, it's great, but a lease payment's like $900 or $800, $700. It's a lot.
Yes.
It's not $300, and so Nissan came up with an amazing program and said, you know what, we need to get like our salesmen are comfortable selling ICE cars, right? They
Yes.
know ICE. They need to experience EVs. They got to get comfortable with them so they can be a better endorser and do a better job endorsing
Yes.
the EV product. So they put out this killer EV lease deal for Nissan employees at dealerships.
Yes.
And we sold every Aria that we had in stock because the payment was like $400 a month. And so they said, you know what? And I think it was only a 12-month lease,
Yeah.
but they all said, I'll try an EV for $400 for 12 months. And
Sure.
so we'll find out 12 months from now if they're hooked and they like it. But we got to get the EVs to a better price point for them to start moving, I think, in volume. And I think it's a big problem.
Um, I wanted to go towards EVs, and and for two reasons. One, I think affordability is indeed an issue across the board, whether it be an ICE vehicle or whether it be an EV. I think with interest rates where they are, the amount of people that can afford those type of car notes that it takes to get into a vehicle today is the number of those people are dwindling. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then, as a dealership, you have to make investments in EV infrastructure
Yeah,
in order.
we've already done a lot of that. Yeah.
uh, can without sharing too much information, can you share with the audience what that expense looks like for a dealership?
So we're fortunate because we don't have Ford. And
Mhm.
Ford, I'm sure, I don't know if you've read the headlines, but I mean, Ford can run you upwards of
Yes.
$1 million+ to do all that work. Our brands have been a little bit more understand. I don't know even know if understand is the right word, but more reasonable. And so we have. I don't remember the number. I think we have upwards of 10 EV chargers at our
Okay.
Jeffrey campus, and I think we've got another 10 over in Southfield. And depending on the work, if you don't have it can be very expensive because the electrical probably isn't in the location where you have it. So you got to run the electrical
Mhm.
there. You might need to upgrade your box. So it could be 25, 50 grand to get some of these EV chargers there. But The charging station itself is not that expensive. It's
Mhm.
really the labor. The big expense is getting the juice to
Yes.
where it needs to go.
But that's an expense that legitimately dealerships didn't need to worry about in the past.
And not only that, what's really interesting, because I talked to a dealer friend a couple months ago, and they sell or represent a brand that's got a little bit more EVs.
Uh-huh.
And the really interesting thing that he said was, when I have an ICE car and I bring my car to get an oil change, and you return my car with the same gas that was in the car when I dropped it off, you know, no customers ever complained and said, well,
Yeah.
you didn't fill up my tank, right? This guy was saying that EV customers were like, well, what the heck? You didn't charge my car. And so I thought it's really interesting, just
Yeah.
because it's just something to think about, that it just, I mean, that's a big expense. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say, "Hey, you drop your car off for service, and not only are we gonna service it, but we'll make sure it's vacuumed and washed for you."
right, which we
Okay,
do. Yep. Yep.
but the
And now
EV owner
charged
would say, on top of that, "I want you to charge
a
that
full
son of
charge.
a gun, and that can be on you as well."
Yeah, I mean, that could be $30 or something. So yeah, I don't know. So that's it. That, I think that's going to be a very interesting trend. Kind of to that point, though, a lot of our chargers. So we have the majority of our chargers are on the other side, on like the customer facing side of our lot is fenced in, like our back lot,
Mhm.
and so the majority of our chargers are customer facing, and we have not done a good job of like adding, like, there's an option where you can make them like, you have to pay to use, I guess.
Mhm.
You can add it to the grid or whatever.
Yeah.
We've been slow to do that, and so like we had a lot of employees that were charging their EVs every day, and again, you know I'm not paying for employees gas, like I shouldn't be paying for my employees electricity either. So
Exactly.
it's just a really interesting, I think at the end of the day, dealers and customers should expect to pay for a tank of, or I don't know if
Fuel,
a full
whatever the fuel
a
is.
full charge,
Yeah.
a full charge.
Whatever that fuel becomes, it should not be a dealer expense. I worked the last group I worked for, uh, we had a couple BMW stores, Audi stores, Porsche, uh, and a mini store, and I ran the mini store for quite some time. And one of the fellows that worked at the store had a BMW i3, or as the owner of the group liked to refer to it as, the clown car. And
Yeah,
and God bless Lou, he would always say, You know what, kids, I think I want to drive a clown car home tonight." And so we'd have to get an
that
i3
car.
ready for him. But Marty used to bring his i3 and he would plug it in, and I kept thinking to myself every day, I said, "My gosh, Lou is paying for his
Yeah,
fuel. Why? He doesn't pay for no, he didn't pay for
right.
mine, come to think of it." Um, I and I've never quite figured out why employees or um even what was I going to say? Even customers would expect the
Yeah.
dealership to pay for their electricity that they need for their cars.
So the brands we represent don't have a whole, like, Nissan has sold the Leaf for, I think it's going on like 10 plus years,
Yeah,
but you probably could count on two hands, and probably you might not even need your feet
yeah.
to for the amount of Leafs that we sold over those 10 years. Um, but I don't know. I mean, things are definitely changing. I mean, Tesla's definitely building a large network. There's a lot of Teslas in Metro Detroit, but I think there's reasons people drive Teslas and reasons why people don't drive EVs from other brands, perhaps.
Well, I will tell you that Justice, who is the producer for this show, who owns a Tesla will tell you that the answer to that is the Tesla's charging system and the Tesla's the charging plug, the North American charging standard. That is his main reason, and also price at this point, as to why people buy Teslas. Now, you mentioned earlier that, like at Kia, you have for ICE vehicles, you have like a 14-day supply, but you got 120 some day supply of EVs.
Yeah.
Is Kia doing anything at this point to help alleviate that situation? Because it's not just at your dealership. I can tell you, when we look at the numbers, Kia EVs aren't selling anywhere.
Well, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a regional issue to some extent. Like Michigan's not a ZEV state. So I've got like a really good customer that really wants a plug-in hybrid.
Okay.
And he really wanted a plug-in hybrid Accord, but I said, I can't get it for you because Honda won't ship us plug-in hybrids because Michigan's not a ZEV state.
Yeah.
And so if we were a ZEV state, so basically what we were told that by some of our OEMs that it costs them so much money to sell this, they lose out. The penalty in a ZEV state for not hitting that metric is so costly that they want to make sure that every possible car, EV and whatnot, go to those states. So,
gotcha.
So I don't know. I kind of feel like it's somewhat of a regional problem, but I haven't talked to enough Kia dealers, in Florida or California to see if they're sitting there either.
But
but it sounds like they are.
Well, from everything we've seen, the EVs have slowed up the demand for them, and the day supply is building rather rapidly. Now, you're a numbers guy. How much is floor plan hurting you? And then if we can, how does that really impact looking at all those EVs that are sitting around that don't seem to be finding homes rather quickly?
I think it's a very interesting. So I think I hope I don't get in trouble by saying all this, but so I feel like a lot of the OEMs might have looked at EVs as an opportunity to press the reset button on some of the ways that they compensate dealers in terms of margin and in terms of kind of other help in different areas. And I think that might have been done in a vacuum because some of those decisions were made back in kind of the COVID hype of constrained supply, large demand. And, it's a pendulum, right? And I think the pendulum might have swung too far to one side on some of the EVs. And you're right, because when we sold all those Arias, Nissan said, great, you can get 6 more. And we're like, well, I don't know if I really want to buy 6 more. Like maybe I would stock 1, but I don't know if I need 6. So I think it's, from the industry standpoint, it's very concerning because the OEMs have made, they're forecasting, 8 years in advance, right? Because they're trying to figure out where this whole thing's going to go. Like, do you need 600 miles per fill up? Is plugins the better way? Are hybrids the better thing? Is it fuel cells? Like, they're trying to plan this. And I've talked to a friend of mine that works at one of the OEM, and he's like in charge of this for his company. And like, he does, like, it's so hard because no one's got a crystal ball. And I think that it's just very concerning when you see the headlines about GM and Honda. They terminated their partnership.
Yes.
All the big 3 seem to be
backing off.
I don't know, slowing
backing
down
off.
Yeah. I think they're making the right decision from a capital perspective because all those OEMs are very like return on investment and all, like they have, like, because I was there. they have presentation after presentation about, return on investment and, do we want to invest in this factory and what's our return going to be and how long is it going to take and this and that. And so they underwrite they go through all those processes.
Sure.
And I think and that's what Wall Street, rewards them on is a good deployment of capital. And I think some of these investments might not have been that good. And I think it's prudent for them to take kind of a second look to make sure that they're making the right investments. And so I guess maybe the end of the day, when the government tries to mandate and kind of force the market to do something, it doesn't always end very well. So I'm a little concerned, frankly, but I don't know. Like, is the government in 3 years going to say, okay, we're going to have to double or triple the from 7,500 to 20 grand a car, or is I don't know.
I don't know either, but can you I think a lot of the numbers that got bandied about were what's that old wild ass guesses. A lot of them, and
yeah, but the OEMs are really good at those wild ass guesses because that's
really.
Well,
you say, and I'll tell you why I say not really. You take a company like Stellantis, who today has the highest on-hand day supply of automobiles and trucks in this country, okay? And that all happened because they decided they needed to go more upscale and raise their prices, and the public hasn't bought into that. So there was what I would call a wild ass guess that you might say, but they really thought about this. But through what lens were they thinking about
it? Yeah, they have a lot of Wagoneers, and it is a beautiful, like, it's an amazing car.
No, it is.
It is great, but it's also very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And but the flip side to that is when you have Tesla, and you have a company that, like, I had a friend of mine that he bought his Tesla. I think it was supposed to like deliver in like January, February of 2023.
Yeah.
And he was getting hounded like day after day, like, your car's here, pick up your car. Like, this was the end of their quarter. So it was the end of December. They're like, take this car, take it. He's like, no, I don't need it now. Just, I'll wait. And they're like, no, take your car now. So
sounds
he finally
like the
took
car
it.
business.
It was, but then if you recall, so like he paid, I don't know, whatever for his Model Y, and then they reduced the price by like 20% the next week. And then they continued to do that. So my friend was pissed because he just overpaid for his car.
Yes.
And when you were someone who, like, the market just doesn't work when you start at the year at 140 grand or 120 it is for the Model S or X, whatever it was, and then it ends at 80. Like, the traditional OEMs are very, like, they understand that destroys your residual value and that crushes your whole owner base.
Or
because then you can't trade in your car. You're stuck to that forever.
Well, and as Justice knows, and he'll hear me say it again, it was almost as if Tesla was saying to all those customers who bought before, sucker.
Yeah, right.
Because they were.
It's really hard, and that's why you really have to, like, commend someone like Honda for having that. Like, I think they're always like the number one residual brand company, or the best resale value or something. Them and probably Toyota or Subaru, and that takes a lot to manage that and make sure that you don't muck that up. And it's really important. And so I don't know where. So the EVs are very concerning because who knows. The value is very challenging at the end of those cars.
One of the things that allows dealerships to operate is inventory.
Yep.
Now, back a few years ago, the cost to carry that inventory was relatively low in comparison to what it is today. Now, you are fortunate enough that most of the brands you have, you don't necessarily have that 90, 120, 180-day supply of cars that you have sitting on the ground that you have to pay floor plan interest on. But have you seen has there been a dramatic increase in your floor plan costs over the last 12 to 18 months?
So like you said, we've been very fortunate that we've been making sure that we're constantly turning our inventory so that, we don't have an aging problem and we don't have too many cars in stock. But yeah, I mean, pre-pandemic, I mean, we used to run at probably 90-day supply of new car inventory, which was just way too much. And so if we were paying these rates,
Then,
it would be unsustainable. It would not work at all. I mean, it would have sucked all of the profitability out of the dealership. Would have all gone to financing that inventory. At today's rates. I mean, we're paying 7% or something on our new car inventory. It's crazy.
It really is.
And
when you think about how low it had been for such a long period of time.
Yeah. So to sit on those cars for that, you can't do it. And so it's going to start. Yeah, it's a challenge, and there's a delicate balance between having the right cars and too many cars.
Yes, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
But the flip side to that is the OEMs have become much more, at least the brands that we represent, have been much more sophisticated in their allocation of cars. And you can't just call Kia and say, hey, give me 2 more truckloads of Tellurides. And so you're going to get whatever you've earned, and that's it.
Which is fair.
Like, you get what you get and you don't have a fit.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about service. One of the things I talk about on our shows a lot is service absorption and how important that is for a dealership. You are a numbers guy. Can you, at your dealerships, what type of service absorption percentage are you guys running at?
So we are around just shy of 80 at our dealerships, which is pretty good. I think 85 is like very good. Is what our NCM usually tells us. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think the benchmark's right around 80. So
yeah, so we're doing very good. A lot of that is help. We have 2 body shops, which are great, and they have been super busy. So that definitely helps us, the body shops. But yeah, I mean, the fixed absorption is important because it allows you to make less money, at least when things normalize, because you're going to revert back to the mean at some point. I don't know if it's next year or 3 years or 10 years from now or tomorrow, but we're going to have to revert back to the mean, I think.
Yes.
And that service and fixed operations gross is what keeps your lights on and allows you to, lose money selling new cars to feed your, units in operation.
Yeah, absolutely. What's fascinating, at least to me, having been on the new car side of things most of my life in retail automotive, when I tell this story, that in many cases, the new car portion of the dealership is the loss leader for everything else. And people go, oh, that's not so, Ray. That can't be. You guys are making like $10,000 on every new car that you sell.
Yeah,
and I go, no, you're only off by about $9,800.
Right. Or 10.5. Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear you say that, because people, when it does get back to normal, and as I like to say, these are abnormal times. But when it does get back to normal, and you're no longer looking at $2,000 to $3,000, gross profit per new car vehicle sold, but you're back to 200 to 300.
Or negative 300.
Or negative, yeah. That service is what keeps the whole damn thing afloat.
Yeah. Yeah, but then the wild card there is what's the service opportunity when we switch to EVs?
Yes.
And over the air updates and stuff like that. So it's there's a lot. So when I first joined in like 2014, my family, my dad, always said that this is not it's a young game. And things are changing super fast. And I feel like then, like 2 years later, my dad's like, things have never changed faster in the last 2 years. But like, it just is always changing, and it is at a faster and faster pace, I think. But the good thing is, I think dealers are entrepreneurs, and they are we, I guess, are a body that kind of figures it out, and are survivors, and we'll kind of adapt.
My last question to you: do you consider yourself and your group to be proactive or reactive when it comes to the business?
Very good question. I like to think of ourselves, hopefully, as proactive. I think sometimes, like, my cousin is definitely proactive. I'm a little bit more cautious and reactive. I think my cousin and I, we've got this saying that Eric, my cousin, is always like, ready, shoot. Oh, you wanted me to aim, and I'm more of a aim. Okay, ready to shoot. So that's why we're a good pair.
Have you ever eaten at Giovanni's restaurant in Detroit?
No. What's Giovanni's?
Giovanni's Restaurante. Look it up. When we were in Detroit for the Detroit Auto Show, we took the team to dinner at Giovanni's Restaurante, and it's like it seems as if it's in the middle of nowhere, and yet it was one of the most memorable, best meals I have ever had in my life. So not to throw a commercial in here for Giovanni's Restaurante, but if you ever have the opportunity, Jason, to take your family there, do it.
It looks like, all right. Oakwood Heights.
I don't know where the hell it is.
It's like in near Dearborn. Is that?
It just seemed like
all right. I'm gonna have to look
we drove through. We drove in.
It was good
to the middle of nowhere, but then this restaurant's just there, and the valet parking guy's just there, but the food was amazing. So
you're lucky you made it there for the auto show, because in the wintertime, it was always the worst time of the year when it snowed, 7 inches or 12 inches, and it was freezing. But now we've switched it to the spring or fall.
It was in fall. Yeah, it was September. We were there September.
Oh, it was the most recent. I thought.
Yes. We were literally we were just there, and we had a great time. We had a great time in Detroit, at least where we were by the convention hall there.
It is incredible down. So we were supposed to. So my wife surprised me, and we did like a staycation for I don't think it was my birthday. I don't even know why we did it, but we like stayed downtown, and like it was so much fun in the summer. This was a couple summers ago, and like there people are like drinking in these like alleyways, and like it was really. So we were supposed to host my 20 group, and we were going to do they were going to see our dealership and do a facility tour, and then we are going to have a meeting. We were going to be in Detroit, have fun downtown, and then it was in the middle of COVID, so we ended up canceling it. Wow. And we were supposed to go to the auto show. It was going to be great, but it didn't work out for us.
Well, we had a great time in Detroit. We really did, and I was so impressed with that area of the city. Now, my understanding is I might not be impressed with some other areas of the city, but that area was gorgeous.
That downtown area is great.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
It's a lot of fun.
Jason, I cannot thank you enough for spending an hour with me today.
My pleasure.
I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I did.
I had a great time.
It's, it's
So,
always great talking to car guys.
well, I have been all my life. I can't help myself. Um,
Right.
so, Jason Tamaroff, thank you so much for being here. And if you ever want to come back on, just let us know.
Yeah,
We'd be more than happy to continue the conversation for another hour.
that's great. Well, I really appreciate it, Ray, and pleasure meeting you. And yeah, happy to participate. And
Thank you
I
again.
hope your viewers love me.
Well, I think they will. I don't know why they wouldn't.
Good.
They're definitely
All
going to
right.
love your wallpaper.
Yes. Thank you. All right.